Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you're having an amazing day. Happy Sunday to you and your family, and obviously, hopefully, you're staying safe and having a fun, responsible holiday weekend. That being said, we're going to take a look here at Bitcoin, of course, help understand best practice and big picture. So if you are new to the channel, I'm not a financial advisor. I just love teaching people to trade. So I hope you can learn something here today, of course. And if you do, awesome. Let me know, of course. Like to hear that. I actually get a lot of positive feedback here recently. I greatly appreciate that. So thank you so much to all my current community members and subscribers. If you do want to become a community member, CryptoCache.tech is a website, link in the description below. I actually have a trading community actually as well, which is kind of nice. More importantly, we got a lot of folks coming over because of our trading academy where I teach you how to become a better trader. I do send out signals as well, kind of as an added benefit to give you a perspective on trades that I'm taking so you know how to structure them effectively. Okay, that's the whole goal and purpose, because of course right now the strategy is to minimize our loss and to effectively ensure that we're not taking large position sizes. I think you should probably exercise something similar too. When you're in a bear market, it's more so survival instead of trying to thrive per se, because you're not pushing the buck too often. It definitely works out a lot better if you're safer than sorry. Either way, those are just things that we're looking at here, and we'll go ahead and take a look here. So first things first, with Bitcoin, we can see this descending trend on the daily, obviously continuing concurrent with the 50-day simple moving average. So once more, just to reiterate this, I know I've told this millions of times before, but I'll continue to say it, we're not out of this downtrend yet. Okay, even though we are potentially at a double bottom, we could see an increase. We also have a bearish pennant pattern, right? Which could essentially come down lower. All right. So again, there's a lot of different things you could kind of look at to kind of build a case on which way it's going to go. But in truth, we're still not back on track, right? It's going to be probably about a month or two before we see any type of significant increases. It will probably be preceded with somewhat of a decrease. So I am speculating we are going to see a decrease here potentially soon. I don't know if it's going to happen right now. We might see some consolidation, perhaps an increase, but we'll see here in a minute. Let's go ahead and show you what I mean by that. First of all, we're stuck under 50, 50 of course, but under 30 on the RSI as well. And notoriously when we do that, we stay there for a little while. This being a holiday weekend, it makes sense. In other words, we could expect the price to recover, I would say, next week, but I don't think it's going to significantly recover. It will probably be something along the lines of the price action kind of coming up to test this level and then possibly getting rejected. Again, with this bearish type of pennant pattern, it's very common for it to break to the downside, but it usually tries one last time. Okay, so we should actually have one last-ditch effort, so to speak, to, I would say, 20,000, maybe 21,000, and then possibly get rejected to the downside. That seems like more of a probability overall in the sense of things here, but generally speaking, there's nothing here that's really significantly disadvantageous. The one thing that is positive to the upside here, as far as potential is concerned, is the simple fact that we are actually hitting a 7 here on TD sequential. Now, I know, obviously 9 would be ideal because then we'd see some type of a recovery, but we might very well see some kind of a very similar price action to this right here. Okay, so the price might actually come up, back down, and then continue to the downside like we're expecting. That to me seems like a very realistic probability. So to me, I don't think we're going to see the price just drop tomorrow. That would be probably very unlikely unless there's a fundamental catalyst. What I do think would happen, we'll start to see a slow recovery. It may retest this level and come back down, or it would come up and retest right on 21,500, which is a one-day candlestick close high, and then get rejected. Okay, there's possibility that, again, a closure above 21,500 would effectively give us that higher high and potentially a higher low, and that's what we're looking for. But for right now, we are making lower highs, but we haven't made lower lows yet. Okay, so you could argue that we have this type of wedge pattern forming as well, where the price comes down and it's going to bounce off this second bottom. That is a possibility also. Okay, so again, there's basically two scenarios here, up or down. Big surprise, right? That's essentially how it always is. But in the general sense here, we have overexhaustion relatively high, right? I mean, 7 days in a row of red. There's got to be some kind of recovery. It's not going to be a relief rally per se, but it will be some kind of, I would say, potential increase, likely coming on the 5th of July, possibly even later to this evening when the Eastern markets open. We'll see here soon, but a lot of them are going to view 19,000 as a pretty good buying opportunity, and they'll crank the price up and sell it again just like they did at the month closure here, and where we saw the price action shoot up 10% in like 1 hour. A lot of interesting stuff can happen, but the bottom line here is, to me, is that I think further downside is probable. just in the overall sense of things. So do not, remove from the equation that we could see 14,000 in the relative near future. Will it happen tomorrow or the day after? Probably not. We probably need to see a little bit more of a recovery first before it does that to establish a lower high as well. Because if we get a second lower high here, for example, say we got these lower highs, if we get a second or third, essentially basically a third lower high, that's going to reaffirm this trend line and push the price action lower. So again, next couple of days, it'd be really important to break above 20,000. That'd be really, really helpful. Once again, a lot of different things that could happen, but that's generally what we're looking at on the daily. Looking at the 4 hour, we can kind of see a little more price action here. Really not a lot going on in the last 24 hours. It's kind of boring for lack of better terms. Price comes up, kind of got canceled out, of course, when the one-day candlestick closed. That was the that 10% spike that we saw in about 1 hour. And then the price has pretty much just slowly bled out since then. So you could say that we are making lower lows and lower highs on the 4 hour, which is never a great sign. But once again, we're getting an exhaustive state, so to speak, on the daily. So I think a turnaround would make sense here soon. Again, it's not going to be something significant. What it will very likely be is just something along the lines of this here, hitting up around 20,200, and then possibly getting rejected to the downside. I think that's a pretty strong likelihood. Once again, we'll know more here soon. But that's where we're at for the moment. It'll be very interesting to see what happens when the market essentially opens for the Eastern Hemisphere, as well as just in general, how the actual traditional trading week will kind of unfold or give us more opportunities, more understanding of what's going on. Again, weekends are not super telling, you could say, right? A lot of times weekends can be very dull, and that's what we're seeing right now with low volume this weekend. So taking a look at the RSI, though, we can see we're just kind of trending below 50 and above 30. So that's positive in a sense. I would say if we come up to 50 and get rejected again, that would be a pretty firm indicator that we were going to continue to make lower highs. That's an important thing to recognize. We can also see here on the MACD, they're pretty much concurrent with each other, so that really doesn't tell us a whole heck of a lot. So the 4 hour isn't super telling, except for that it's confirming that we're seeing lower lows and lower highs in the last 24 to 48 hours. Okay, the last 1 to 2 trading days, we are essentially still on a decline. But you got to keep in mind, we are hitting and getting close to that second bottom there. Whereas if the price were to come down, just say to 18,000, then there's a decent chance we'll see a bounce off of that level as a potential double bottom. All right. So again, no absolute guarantees here. This is kind of almost a coin flip in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of information telling us it wants to go higher, but a lot of information telling us it needs to go lower. I do think lower is inevitable. I do personally feel like we're going to see a slight recovery this week, followed by a sell-off next week. Something along those lines, or perhaps even a sell-off later in the week on Friday, taking profits. We'll know more soon when we get there. But for right now, really not a lot telling us here to take a position or to close a position. Lagging span isn't intersected with a price action, you could say, which basically implies if you have a short position, you may want to keep it open, but it's really coming close. It's pretty much touching right there. So that really implies that if you have a short position, you might want to close it because there is a recovery that could happen to the upside. Once again, that may not happen right away. The price needs to go sideways at least for a little bit longer before we're up over that cloud and we break through. So again, I would say 12 to 24 hours from now, we'll have a pretty good understanding of whether or not it would be good to take a position, okay? For the moment, I would recommend just kind of dollar cost averaging as per usual, and not necessarily trying to overinvest at this point. Okay. Again, keep your position sizes small. If you were to take a position, that's what we're doing as well as a community, and it really just helps us stay safer and secure in this environment. And it's worked very well for me in previous bear markets. Okay, so again, whether we like it or not, we are in a bearish market. Traditional markets are down over 20% in just under 6 months. And a lot of things we got to recognize are factoring in here. A lot of world events, a lot of crazy, nonsensical stuff that does influence the price action. So again, it's inevitable for Bitcoin to increase eventually. For right now in this bear market, just again, protect yourself and make sure you're making sound decisions that are not overly presumptuous or super large. Small position sizing, I think, is probably the best, most effective thing to do. So that's kind of where we're at there for the 1 hour. There's not really much to really note. I mean, we got a bunch of resets on TD sequential. So, I mean, we're coming up to 8s, 7s. Now we're at 6s and 5s. So honestly, there's not a lot of consistency. That doesn't tell us too much. And if we take a look at the volume, of course, I mean, it's kind of pretty telling here. But if we look in the last, just say, what is that, about, it's just roughly about a month's worth of trading here. Pretty close to about a month. We can see the largest volume accumulation, of course, right at the 21,000 mark. So that is a potential resistance level. So again, a closure above 20,000 would be very helpful because that'd put us right above this descending type of trend immediately. And that would be very helpful to kind of get us on track. And then of course, if we look at the, the bigger picture, you can tell that we are still well below the descending trend here. So the overall sense here, and again, the trend is your friend. If you know what trend you're in, then it's best to use that to your advantage. Not saying that a bearish trend is positive, but if you know it and you acknowledge it, you're going to be in much better shape. Okay, so again, train yourself to believe that we are in a bearish environment and that we will have random times in which the price wants to come up and increase. But again, as we could see here recently, when the price came up, it just came right back down. So there's a great chance we're going to see some resistance at 20/21,000. So not saying you should open a short, but at this point, we pretty much just want to wait and see. So we're literally right at that precipice where we could increase from here, or we can go lower. We're going to find out very soon. Interesting stuff here. So looking forward to finding out what's where we're at this time tomorrow. It's going to be definitely a little different, but once again, just to summarize, we are 7 days. This is basically the 8th red candle to the downside. So again, in most cases, if you look at Bitcoin's history, it's never gone really past 9 days in a row to the downside. It's very rare for us to see that. So again, not saying that we're going to see a green day, but I think it's more probable to see a green day tomorrow or the day after than it would be a red day to the downside. Okay, well, those are just my sentiments and just the overall sense here. But in truth, this does not look good here. It definitely implies that we're going to make lower lows and lower highs continuously. So I would say pay attention to this next high. If whatever this next high is, if it's lower than the previous high or equal to, then we can expect the price to come back down. Okay, but if we can somehow get a one-day candlestick closure above 21,500 in the next, the next 7,200 and some odd hours, I think that we'll probably be in a pretty good shape to see that continue perhaps higher. Again, we need confirmation. We don't have it just yet. All right, that's kind of where we're at there. All right, so hopefully you learned something here today and I was clear and descriptive. And obviously, thanks so much for your support and just supporting the channel in general. I greatly appreciate all of my viewers and I get some really awesome feedback. So thanks again for that. Really appreciate you. And I just hope you have a wonderful, safe rest of your holiday weekend. And we'll see you again tomorrow for a very likely interesting Monday. But I would say Tuesday is probably going to be more colorful. We'll see. All right, thanks again for joining me. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon.